Hello and welcome to Dell's Gaming. I'm Dell and this is Kerbal's space program, where we are on the launch pad with Tedgun in the modified Taxi, ready to go up one more. Our Ted has become Hero of the Kerbals recently, and once again he's going on a fine mission. We got our science up a little bit, doing lots of local missions to places that we were able to see, and also some rescues by Tedgun himself. So just as a quick review, Valentina visited the island just off the coast of the space center and went into the hangar, and there is an old burnt out pod there. So we did a quick little trip to there and got some nice little bit of science, etc. Then she went up on top of the control tower, which is in that on the island, and just planted a flag there, so as we've got that as a reference point in future. There was a few other places we went to as well, including the pyramids and a few other local areas. Then Tedgun started taking off one more time in the new taxi to give it a bit of a test. So it was this is the first time I'd taken off in the modified with the lower fuel and lower basically lower fuel all over. It's got smaller tanks for the initial boost and also for the later stages. It's still got a bit of wobble there, and I have put some more struts, so we'll see if that wobble at this second or third stage, I think it is, can be reduced a little bit. But we were on the way to rescue Rosie at this particular point, so we were trying to make our way into a nice orbit, and then finally managed to rendezvous close enough so that I could just EVA Rosie and then get her to join up. It was easier to use the Kerbal EVA than it is to try and get the ship to try and be too stable near to it. But anyway, Rosie, her name's actually Rosice, but I'm going to call her Rosie because I can't pronounce half these names, so it's becoming Rosie. So a bit of a bounce on there because I couldn't find the ruddy crew hatch, but she got around to the right spot eventually and boarded. Then we had to set ourselves onto quite a large orbit with quite a large inclination from the normal area, but we still have plenty of fuel left in the taxi at this stage, so we were able to create a reasonable intercept for the orbit that Luduki. She must be called Lydia from now on. But anyway, she was a bit of a difficult one. Took a long time to get the right orbit. That was a little bit of almost a mishap there. But we managed to get a good close intercept eventually after a little bit of time. And Lydia, again, we did actually got a little too close there, to be honest, but managed to salvage it. That could have been, again, a little nasty. Ted was being a little too fancy at that point, I think. He wanted to show off and see how close he could get to the wreckage. But Lydia eventually did go into EVA, and once again just made her way over to the Tedgun, who's now got all the ladies in the pod eventually. So they're all sitting down there having some munch of some supplies, because I'm sure they were probably hungry by this time. But there is some supplies on the taxi. So then it was just a matter of returning. So testing the landing procedure. I didn't do a full aero braking on this. I just brought it down, used up all of the fuel, and then just gave it a test to see what its landing position was like when it was coming in. Now, it did end up going a little bit for this island. I wanted to do a water landing, but it wasn't too bad. I thought, okay, let's go for this island, see if we can end up hitting it in the land. and everything was sort of going okay, and I thought, oh, we'll just hit the edge of the island and get in some land, but it was sort of looking okay. Landing legs went down. We're looking okay. Coming in quite nicely on the island, and oh, that's going to land right on the edge. Now, it could be lucky, try to move across a little bit, really try to move it over, but I think I'd left it a little too late to make any corrections. Once those parachutes are out, you can't really correct it any further. I should have been a little bit earlier and tried to get into the centre of the island. So it landed just on the edge of this cliff, which, as you can imagine, is not good. But the speed was good, and the landing legs did survive the initial impact. It was the rolling motion here which basically blew the crap out of everything. But in the end, because we're using that the cockpit, the Mark III, I think it is, it can take a fair bit of a bashing, so it worked out all okay. So after all of that superhero, or should it be Super Ball or Super Kerbal? Anyway, action from Tedgun. He is once more at it again, because we now have two stranded Kerbals. One is around Kerbin itself, and we've got Hillary, because I can't pronounce that, is our first target, and it's going to be around Kerbin. So that's just a integrate there, and we're going to meet up. Now I think we're just going to miss the intercepts here. We might have to run that again. The other one is, if we go over to the Mun, we have Lumi. And Lumi is on a low orbit around the Mun to also be rescued. So that's two more rescue missions at the same time. This time we're going to go for a third mission as well. What I have added to the top of the standard Mun taxi is a growth experiment, the plant growth. Now we have a contract which is worth 80 science if we bring that back. So add that with the normal science for doing the plant growth around the Mun, etc. That's going to give us quite a considerable growth. Now the plant growth is part of the science module I did add to the game that gave us a number of extra science items, which once we get enough science to buy them, I will put into a station, I think, on the Mun, and we'll have a massive Mun station, I think. But at this moment we need to just go for a standard launch on from Kerbin. So we're going to set ourselves up ready for this first launch of the taxi, and we're going to go for these two. So first of all, these two rescues. So first of all, we will go and rescue Hillary. That is the target at this second. So hopefully, let's get going. We're going to do the standard turn for our system. Standard gravity turn. I've turned it to a 0 degrees ready for the separation of the liquid fuel tanks first. I'll now get ready for the 5,000 meter point, which will put it over a little bit further. There we go, we're over at an 80 degrees with a 0 degree turn. The next one will be 70 at 10,000 feet. We might have to separate, don't get that in, and then we will be separating the fuel. That's the liquid fuel gone. A little explosion there. I don't think we did any damage. Right, we'll be putting this back to 90 degrees ready for there, and 50 degrees for the 20,000, which we just went past. So that should be good. That's the solid fuel done, so they've dropped off. Now we'll get ready for a 30 degree at 40,000 feet, or in actual fact I think we've gone high enough now, because we only wanted to go to about 80 odd thousand and we've gone a little higher than I wanted to. Let's get back to our back over here. Right, let's try and get a capture. Now we do actually want to be low on our orbit. We don't actually want to go too high, because I've actually now got to catch up with this, so we want to be low rather than high. Let's just get into an orbit in general and we'll adjust it once we have an orbit as such. There we go. So that's 19, need a little bit more than that obviously. 49, we'll get it to about 70. 65, that's a little too low. 70, and that's 137. Right, we'll do that one first. Not an ideal situation, but it will get us into an orbit. Then we'll recorrect it here to bring our apoapsis down to about the 84 mark, I think. That's a bit high. Whoops, let's just go the other way a little bit. So we have low, yeah, about there. That will give us some intercepts, I think, on there. Let's just, so we're just now running that first maneuver to put us into a basic orbit. So my gravity turn, I could have done that a little bit more effectively, I think. Now I might need to do a separation here in the middle of this, because we might not have enough to capture. How much we got? We're 800. Yeah, we're gonna have to do a slight bit of burn with the next stage. We'll get ready with that. Liquid fuel is almost gone. Still getting a lot of wobble here, and I think it's this joint here that's now doing the wobbling, and I need to look at securing that joint a little bit. I think I might have to move some of these down to this part rather than being on that joint. Okay, so let's separate that thing. Give us a little bit of burn just to separate and then activate. There we go. And if we look at our view, we've got some intercepts, but they're not great. So what I'm going to do is just need a few rotations to get a good intercept. I'm going to bring this maneuver so that we've got, let's see, 84. Where's their apoapsis? Is there? I might be able to just bring it so we're a little closer to being near each other's point, and maybe get those. So let me just work on the maneuver, and then I'll be back once we have a good capture with Hillary's wreckage. So managed to get about 300 meters away from the wreckage. Took a little while, but that's the nature, and so I transferred over to Hillary and got to go EVA. Now the ship is heading towards us at a bit of a clip. Wasn't as close as I'd like, but it's easier to move around in the EVA mode, so off she jetted out, taking that final last step to rendezvous with Tedgun. So just took a little while. It was quite a distance. But it was you know, it's quite manoeuvrable in the EVA suit with almost no weight. It's amazing how much control and power you've got, although very little fuel. So once aboard, had some food. Tedgun gave her the woohoo! You're aboard, you are rescued, and welcome to Dell's Gaming. So next was to set out an node, because we got to go now and go for Lumi's wreckage, which is around the Mun. So Hillary just had a quick look around her surroundings, sort of make sure everything was in place. Wondering why aren't I going home straight away? So a quick manoeuvre node just to get a target on Lumi's wreckage, or Lumi's scrap I think it is called. A quick little node at the 90-degree angle as usual. So luckily Lumi's is on the equatorial sort of inclination, so I haven't got to muck around with this too much. It was just get it in fairly much level with our orbital inclination. So just set that up to get fairly close, and then eventually got in with about 500 meters. This one was actually took more to get close than I expected to Lumi's wreckage, but once again just exited her from the wreckage and did the long travel on this one. Took a little while to get over to Tedgun's taxi for the trip. You know, he's there, he's waiting for them to come in. It's all got a bit smelly in there, but he doesn't mind Ted. He's got used to it by now. I think the other passengers most probably aren't as happy. So took a couple of little attempts to find where the ruddy crew hatch was, but once I managed to get the crew hatch lined up, just got it in. Unfortunately it was dark, so didn't quite get as good a video as I would like. It was best in the sunlight, but finally got grabbed on board. Everyone's happy, and Lumi had a look around, and yes, Tedgun is happy. Yes, cheers for Tedgun. Super Ted is making his way now. And then at this point, I must admit, just a little bit on from here, I suddenly started to look at the experiments and the other parts of what we needed to do, and plan about doing orbits. And I did contemplate going to visit the science station, but I suddenly realised I made a mistake with the science experiment. For the plant growth you need the HKRN lab, which is a 12-ton lab, for it to work. So I had to give up on that part of the mission. It was unfortunately a failure at this stage. So I decided to just take the girls home. They've been out all night, well, almost most of a few days. So it was time to head back to Kerbin. And I still had quite a lot of fuel left from the initial stage, which is only really designed to get me to the Mun, so which is good. So we managed to burn some of that to get me back into a Kerbin orbit. So exit Mun and get into an orbit of Kerbin. Then did a final burn using the last of the fuel in this stage. And it's a good sign. It means that all of that reduction of weight in the other parts of the taxi has allowed me to really significantly save fuel. I could possibly even remove some of the fuel on that stage or one of the earlier stages, because I've got a full taxi load of fuel left, which is, you know, an extra 1300. So I did burn most of this. Rather than using aero braking, I burned most of this fuel just to bring the orbit down as far as possible at the very beginning. So we just did it as a single rotation, and tried to get back closer to where the KSP, try and land closer to our base if possible. And also burning off all the fuel just makes the ship lighter, which makes obviously everything with the parachutes etc. a little bit more effective. So just kept on the burn as much as I could until I was sure I was going to be hitting on the sun side, and I could see where Kerbal was, and then I did a final burn over the top of the space center. I did aim to try and land in the water. I didn't want to do a ground landing. I was well away from that island this time, so we were just going to try and land near the water. I cut it a little bit because I didn't want to end up landing on the ground. So then I just did a full burn, all the remaining fuel, just to bring it down and reduce our speed. This was also a test of the landing. We tested it once, but with that extra little weight on the top. But it came down quite nicely. And as I say, I think I can reduce the weight of this a little bit further, just for the taxi purposes. We'll have a look at that, because I ended up with a good 1300 delta V left. Or 1000 delta V, even after going into this full orbit. So, deployed the parachutes as normal. So then after that point, we were stable. We were good landing, heading towards the water. Not that far. I think it was only about 60 or 70 kilometers away from the space center, which is good. So we had a good splashdown, I think. So the boats could have come out and picked us up, and then we recovered. Now, obviously, I didn't get the science I was hoping for on this because of that plant growth. But we'll have a look at that at another point. But everything else was able to be recovered without a problem, which is good. The other good part is that now I've got 4 more Kerbals. So we've got a pilot, an engineer, and 2 scientists. So that was the end of that particular part. So although it wasn't 100% what I was aiming for in this particular episode, I was hoping to get a bit more science. We've got enough 300. I need about 450 to do the probes. But the plan at the moment is to carry on with that science, and I need to expand our MUN station, science station, by putting up these additional science labs so that I can run the growth experiment and then the subsequent other experiments. So I'm going to look at what is needed to launch the HKR lab, which is a big 12-ton unit, dock it with the science station, then send up the growth parts as well, so that it can be returned, and also make it so that it is possible to add the other components as we get them in the science tree, to do even more science and even more working out, and more items and more science and getting even more things, which is what this is all about. And then once I have the 450, my primary aim is to make the station, investigate where I can build the station, or the base on the MUN surface at one of the polar ends, I think, at the moment. But I need to do some searching for a flat piece of ground and also plenty of ore for mining. So, as I say, not quite what I expected in this thing, but Tedgun, the hero of the episode, and the Kerbals are celebrating. He has brought all of these people back and keep on getting lost, and we've even got more contracts for lost people. It seems to be a routine thing that other groups tend to get their Kerbals stranded in space, and they require our efforts to get them back. It's not a bad thing, but we have other plans. As always, please click the like button. Leave any comments below about other ideas. I'm still looking at the base. I'm at the best way to build structures on the base. Either creating a template so they're all the same height, etc., or land it as one big item. Still haven't worked out it seems to be, with all the items, it's going to be very large, but we will have a look at what we're going to do on that. But until next time, keep playing the game. Let me know anything else you'd prefer. I do want to do some more landings, but I need to get the science up first. So it's like you need to do one thing to get to the next. Okay, this is a good one. and it's heading in the right direction. So until next time, have fun.